Hello there, boxing fans around the world. Thank you for joining us once again on Talk and Fight for another episode of the Friday Night Panel, featuring yours truly as well as Mike Borat-Born. Tonight we have a very special guest coming in from across, not across the pond, but across the lake, who's down in Buffalo, New York, who's been in the boxing industry for over 30 years, probably close to 40 years, and has done so many things. It would take me take me the entire hour to describe his list of accomplishments. You've seen that list, right, Mike? You know what I'm talking about.
Yes. You know what? It's probably better that we have him explain those list of accomplishments to us. he could probably give us a much shorter version, but still cover everything.
Boxing fans, we have Rick Glaser joining us tonight. He's been in the managerial, actually every aspect of the business of boxing across his adulthood, I'm sure. Maybe he can explain how he got into it as a child. Maybe perhaps potentially he boxed. That I'm not sure about. So let's bring him on. Eric, if you can bring in Rick. There we are.
Hi, Rick. How's it going?
Guys, thanks for having me tonight. Thanks you very much for welcoming me on the show, and fire away with anything you have to ask. I'm an open book.
All right, that's awesome. I did read on your website. In fact, you were such an open book. Give me a call is basically what you're saying on your website. Give me a call. Anyway, so during that introduction, one of my questions that just popped into my head was how early on in your life did you actually get involved in boxing? Like, were you boxing as a kid or?
No, I never. The only gloves I ever had on were winter gloves. I never had work gloves on. I took a fancy to boxing in 1971. I was reading about the upcoming Muhammad Ali Joe Frazier fight, which was, of course, legendary, March 8th, 1971. And I went to the local movie theater, which was showing it on closed circuit. And I asked my mother to drop me up. I was a kid. Oh boy. Hello?
Yep.
Yeah, I lost you here. I don't know what I did wrong here. Hold on. Everything went blank. Hold on. So let's start all over again. Something went wrong. I don't know. I can't find you guys. I don't see anything. It's blank.
I can hear you fine.
Okay, can you see me?
We can see
Eric says, our producer says you might need to refresh.
I don't know how to do that. I don't know. Whatever. I don't know. Doesn't matter if I can see you guys or not. Can you guys see me?
Yes, we can see you and hear you.
That's good. Okay, then we're good. Okay, so what happened was I went to the movie theater, watched the fight, and every time a punch is thrown, whether they land.
Oh, there goes on.
And I think we lost him completely that time. That's unfortunate. There
is a big snowstorm where he lives, and I wonder if that has anything to do with this connection.
It might. Should we touch on the fights while we're waiting then? I guess because we got some big fights this weekend.
Which one do you want to start with? Chris Eubank and Liam Williams, or
actually let's start with Kudaras and Rodriguez card.
Yeah, go for
Rodriguez, 14-0, 10 KOs. This is a guy that I talked about actually last week, I believe it was, announced the promotional deal with Eddie Hearn and Matchroom last week. And yes, we did talk about him. That world title tilt now comes in his first fight with Hearn. And it's going to be this weekend, man, against Kudaras, who's 39-4-1 with 27 KOs. And he's aiming to repeat his victory, over Rungvasi, where he ripped the green and gold belt from the Thai Star in May of 2014 in his Mexico home, man. But now the 33-year-old is refocused on his new test, and that's the young Rodriguez, man. And honestly, it's gearing up to be a good one. Also on this card, Raymond Ford. I've talked about him. He is looking to stay undefeated against Edward Velasquez for the WBA Continental Americas Feather title. So that's going to be great, man. Great action. Also, Jamie Mitchell against Carly Skelke is in the works for this card as well. And that's for the WBA World Female Bantam title. Also, Lorenzo Smith is taking on Fernando Diaz for the WBC United States fly title. And Lorenzo Smith is looking to keep his unbeaten record untarnished and walk away with the WBC United States belt. So I'm looking forward to this. It's going to be a great card.
Yep, there he is.
Sorry,
Excellent.
I don't know what happened.
Excellent.
I turned it on, the phone off and back on and came back on. Okay. So I went to the fight in 71, loved it, and started watching every fight, buying every boxing magazine, reading every newspaper article I could. And the next thing I know is I was in the business full time. And 20 years later, after studying the business, the sport, and everything else, and I took a real liking to it immediately, and I got rid of my business, my regular business, immediately within 6 months, and I was off and running. And that was 1991, and 31 years later, I'm a New York State Hall of Fame inductee. I'm an elector at the Hall of Fame in Canastota. Hopefully, I'll be in the Hall of Fame in Canastota eventually. And what I become is I'm a supplier of I'm a provider, a supplier of quality supplemental services to the boxing business worldwide. I heard you mention management. I've actually never managed a fighter. I've promoted fighters. I've been their advisor, been their agent, but I've actually never managed a fighter. I love what I do. I do it 24/7, 365. My typical day starts at 4 o'clock in the morning. And 3 o'clock actually these days. And then I finish up about 1 o'clock, and I get about 2 to 3 hours worth of sleep. I work for a couple hours, go back to sleep for a couple hours, and then I'm off and running for the rest of the day and night. So I require about 4 hours worth of sleep a day. My wife calls me an animal. So
That's awesome. So you're a matchmaker.
Well, it's one of the things I do. I'm an international agent, broker, and advisor is most of my business. I'm not really a matchmaker anymore because I don't do complete shows ever since I got cancer in 2016. I stopped traveling and I stopped being a matchmaker, and most of my business is over the phone and over the internet.
What was one of your, I guess, most memorable matches that you put together?
The list would go on and on. Paul Spadafore's victory, and I worked with Paul for forever. I was his matchmaker. And when he won the title, and he was 9-0-1 in IBF title fights. Joe Calzaghe, Roy Jones, and Madison Square Garden. That was literally all me. After a while, they all blend together, and they're like one big maze. You know what I mean? So
right.
You don't even know. You can't even remember. Sometimes you can't even remember your role in that fight. You knew you were involved, but was I his agent? Was I his advisor? Was I the matchmaker? You sort of have to sort of put it together. You know what I'm saying? That's what 31 years of boxing does to you. You just don't know what you did. Like your Canadian Olympian Billy Irwin. I was his promoter, and I got him 2 world title fights. One in 2000 with Spadafora, and one in 2000, whatever year it was, 2005 with Juan Diaz. So it just sometimes you got to think of what your role was exactly. But here I am, 31 years later, loving what I do for a living, and I wouldn't change a thing. I got married late in life. Part of it was because of boxing, and I wouldn't change a thing about that either.
That's awesome.
Within the sport itself, a couple of issues have come up recently. And in particular, we've discussed them at great length on this show. One would be whether or not a union might benefit boxers now, or a players association, as it's called in other sports industries. But what are your thoughts on that? Do you think the players are the boxers themselves, the fighters are ready for a?
No, not on the pay scale level, okay, because they're getting paid well, okay. It's on the areas that they need is health insurance, a pension, and also some kind of, because the fighters are most of them are very uneducated. They need financial guidance, and I think if they brought on people that were financial counselors, that were career professional financial advisors, and they offered a pension, and they had a health insurance, for beyond boxing, I really think it would be a great asset to the sport. No question about that.
Yeah, we've seen it on both ends of the spectrum. One, in the development of younger boxers, and on the other end of the spectrum, with those boxers who've retired and have nothing to fall back on. So in those two, no, if they're in the game, they don't really need that help in terms of the financial end. Having said that, here's another opinion-based question for you. In the heavyweight division, we've got our top 5 heavyweights. I don't know if you're following the heavyweights or not, but the heavyweight's pretty clogged up, okay? And the other day I was having a great conversation with Christian von Spanak over in England, and he was saying, what might be a solution is to unclog it by having a tournament-styled, a Grand Prix event over the span of, say, a year, to see who among those below that top 5 would actually be, among the next heavyweight contenders, because the point differential, if you take a look at Box Racket, the point differential between the top 5, like the guy who kept his WBA heavyweight belt this weekend, Trevor Bryant, okay, he's ranked 38 on that list, and his point total is 6. I think Alexander Usyk's point total is like 400 and something. So the point differential is humongous. And so there needs to be some unclogging in that top. And we know that, Usyk and Fury, are probably ultimately going to battle it out after I'm guessing, their respective wins. If Fury beats White and if Usyk beats Anthony Joshua again, it sets up that. But in the meantime, there's a slew of heavyweight contenders, which Mike he brings up all the time. But from your perspective, what do you think? Is there a way to unclog that heavyweight division?
No. They can't even find a guy to be an IBF eliminator right now. They've had 8 guys turn it down to fight Felipe Havovic, and an IBF eliminator. They're going down the list. How are they going to get all these fighters together? There's not a prayer. They can't even get one fight together. Everybody's posturing. Everybody's on their own. See, here's the problem that you have, okay? And people don't recognize this. Certain fighters bring foreign TV money to the table from their country, so they don't have to go out and fight anybody real challenging, because their TV's basically paid for by the TV in their country. So they're not going to go out and fight a risky fight and blow that up, because if they lose, they most of them have a 1-loss agreement, and they'll think that if you lose a fight that the agreement's terminated. So nobody's going to do that. That's the problem you got, and TV and streaming today is dictating so much to what these fighters are doing that it's put it in a whole different sphere, different level, and where these people don't want to fight one another, and also the promoters don't want to put, because this guy doesn't want to lose to this guy's fighter. This guy will lose his payday. People ask me, well, how come Gervonta Davis doesn't fight anybody? I said, well, that kid would fight Godzilla. The problem is Mayweather has no other money makers besides Gervonta Davis, so he's got to keep milking that one horse along, and that's why they won't put him in with anybody very good. So it all goes back to that theory to the heavyweights right there. I mean, that's the way it is. We can sit here and talk about it, and we can waste our time, because it is a waste of time. It's not happening.
That's unfortunate.
So if, for example, someone came along with a shit ton of money and put it on the table, it still wouldn't happen?
Nope. Because it doesn't meet the promoter's agendas. Every promoter has a different agenda for how they run their business and how they want to conduct their business with that fighter, and what they have as a game plan for that fighter. It's a fact. Wow. It's not something we face as far as the general boxing enthusiast, but it's a reality of the business.
Right.
Well, in that case, the women are bringing a breath of fresh air to this sport.
That's
What's
right.
that?
That's right. The women are bringing a breath of fresh air to the sport. Then that's for sure.
No, it's not a pretty look. Let's put it that way to you. The whole heavyweight situation.
No, it's not. It's not. It's unfortunate because there's a lot of really good talent in that heavyweight division, and
Sure, there is.
and it's unfortunate that we don't get to see as much as we could, and as often as we could, because there is a slew of fighters sitting in the background waiting for their shot to just be in that top 10 at least.
At least.
Agreed.
So who are you following then? Who are you working with these days? What's on your agenda?
Now working with a young Canadian, Spencer Wilcox. He's going to turn pro March 25th in Montreal. I'm working with him. Are you familiar with Spencer Wilcox?
I've heard of him. Yes.
Yeah, he's turning pro. He's, I think, 21 years old. He's very tall, very good looking young man from Hamilton, and he had a very good amateur background. He can punch, he can box, and he looks like the complete package, including Golden Boy type good look. So, hope to do something well with him. And I'm working with quite a few fighters as an advisor. As the Arthur Bleznov,
I have not heard of him.
the Chechen Wolf from Toronto.
No, I haven't. I haven't heard of him actually.
Graham,
These are some new ones. These are some good guys. You're going to put me on. Awesome.
I believe he's 9-0 with 7. I work with him. I'm his advisor, and he's from Toronto. Just work with a lot of fighters, all over the world, and I have small pieces of fighters, 5-6%, and as the advisor and stuff like that. And I'm happy with that. It works well for me. I'm not the main guy, and I don't want to be because it's too much responsibility, and I've got too many corporate accounts I have to worry about, promoters and TV networks and casinos and stuff like that to handle fighters, because you become a high-priced babysitter, and I'm not going to do that. I'd rather render the advice and call and move the fighters along in the organizations and do my job in that area, rather than deal with fighters on a daily basis. It's too hard. There are not enough hours in a day now for me.
So for example, the casino would call you up and say, we're looking to put on an event or a monthly event. And
not exactly. They'll call me and say, "What do you think of this on this TV network? This fight, this situation, blah blah blah. What can we and should we buy this show? They want X amount of dollars from us, and they want to know how much they can get away with selling the tickets for." And I have a general idea in their area what the fight means to boxing. It will be well watched on TV because I want to know for the exposure. And I render advice to them, and it's I don't get a lot of money for that, but it's all money. It all adds up at the end of the year.
Without a doubt, you mentioned the Toronto boxing scene. Well, in Ontario, as you know, Ken Hayashi, when he was sports commissioner, didn't allow.
He ruined it.
Yeah. Took the words out of my mouth. So a lot of the fighting has been going on in Montreal, and post-COVID now it's started to pick up at least. But it's good to know that you're on the ground with respect to what's happening in Toronto, because I know there've been a few fights up in Brampton very recently. So it's starting to pick up once again now that Ken Hayashi's out of the picture. But
he's been gone for about 5 years now, to be honest with you. The thing that slowed it down was the COVID, and the government's been shut everything down up there in boxing. But he was a cancer to professional boxing in Ontario. His reign was absolutely. It was a Hitler type of reign. It really was. Really killed boxing off. It was terrible, and. I had right when I met the guy the first time over the phone, I had a beef with him. And Billy Irwin and Tom Gillespie were making their pro debuts in Niagara Falls, Ontario, or I think maybe it was Toronto. I can't even remember anymore. And both guys were in first round knockouts, and he turned down a lot of guys for both, and he settled with these two guys. You got me. You screwed me. Those were bums. I said, no, you got 2 Olympians that can fight. After that, he kept raising the bar all the time. It was just it was terrible. It was a horrible experience. This is not a place you're going to build up fighters. These guys got to fight, and I keep putting them in. They kept winning. It was my fault. It was unbelievable, this guy. You know, what a horrible human being. One of the worst I've ever met. Seriously. Probably, if I had to rate a top 10 horrible person in boxing list over my 31 years, he'd be easily been supplanted in that top 10. Easily.
Wow. Rick, in your opinion, what do you think needs to be done in Ontario to resurrect it?
More fan awareness from the promoters, for starters, you know, and the fighters themselves. The fighters don't seem to promote themselves. They do in Montreal. I think they've got to get away from the center of Toronto and go to these little smaller facilities around the edges of Toronto, because things get lost in the shuffle in Toronto because it's such a big booming city. And if you went to the smaller areas like Oakville, right on the edge, you would do better business in a smaller community where the people would be more well aware of an event. Does that make sense?
That makes total sense. Yeah, everybody out there listening has heard that. That makes total sense. I know there's like we have had smaller events like in Brampton and stuff like that, but yeah, even further out like Oakville, Oshawa, Pickering, there's all these small places, and then I guess it would be up to the promoters and the fighters to promote and get things going here. Definitely.
Yeah, it's also too expensive to run a show up there. The insurance, the rental factor, it's a little bit of everybody needs to cooperate. Everybody here's professional boxing. They're trying to gouge. It's not like that. It's grassroots boxing, and you can't gouge on grassroots boxing.
Speaking of guys in the industry who've had their ups and downs, Don King last weekend put on an event, and we realistically hadn't heard his name in professional boxing for quite some time. But he put on an event. It was relatively successful. It was a pretty small, but to your point about small venues, it was a pretty small venue, I believe, in Ohio. But nonetheless, he put on some, I think there were 6 different titles up for grabs. If I'm not mistaken.
6 titles.
So it makes me wonder, if you're going out to these smaller venues, these smaller centers, you'll get a more excited crowd, if you will, as opposed to putting into a big.
Absolutely. Too many people in the casinos are sitting ringside. They get free tickets. They're sitting on their hands. They're not jumping up and down. And the guy who's buying his ticket for $50, $60, that blue collar guy, he gets excited. It's a lot of it's locale. A lot of it is demographics. It's just the way it is. Boxing's a true blue collar sport. I mean, the high rollers, the gamblers, they come to the big events. But when you're talking about a small event in a small town, it's the local people, the local iron worker, the local construction worker. That's the guy that driving the ticket sales. Brings his son-in-law. That's what it's about. You know what I mean? And Don recognizes that, and they had a nice turnout of 2,500 people the other night in a small wore-out steel town. So there's your answer right there. He wouldn't have got 2,500 for that show if it was down in South Florida. There you go. Too many things to do.
Right. What are your thoughts on the Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano?
Well, I'm not a believer in women's boxing. I don't enjoy it myself. I'm old school, but it's as big of a women's fight as been since Layla Ali and Jackie Frazier in the early 2000s. So that's like 21 years ago. So it's a big fight. No question about it. It's a big fight. And, it's the cream. It's the cream of the crop of women's boxing. Let's put it that way too.
Yeah, it certainly is. Oh, yeah. Certainly is. What about these comments that were coming out in the wake of the Tyson Fury Dillian White connection, when they finally agreed to a deal where they said, well, there may not be a pay-per-view opportunity for this fight in America. What do you think about that?
It's going to be a pay-per-view in America. I don't know what people get. You got to. how are you going to pay for $41 million? Got to be pay-per-view. It's got to be pay-per-view in the UK. It's got to be pay-per-view in America. It's got to be sold to countries all over the world. They got to do a massive crowd. I mean, you're going to have an awful lot of revenue streams to pay for $41 million. In my mind, what I think it'll do in numbers, I think it grosses somewhere around $47 to $48 million in my mind, after paying off any cable providers in the U.S. They're going to go ESPN Plus, ESPN Plus app pay-per-view. They're not going to go cable or satellite. But I think it does well. I think it'll be a real sell, because I think both of them have big mouths, and that's a good thing when you're promoting a pay-per-view event, especially. And Bob Arum, Frank Warren, doesn't get more iconic than those two. And the press writes everything Frank and Bob say. So I think it's a natural fit. I really do. I think did they overpay? No, they didn't really overpay, because I'm sure if Tyson Fury's working on a less guarantee than the percentage would indicate on the winning console, they didn't really overpay. They wanted control of the promotion, and Tyson Fury wanted his people to have control of the promotion. So They worked it out beforehand, and there's probably a guarantee of X amount of dollars in there for him, and he's probably not getting his full 80% of the revenue of the purse bid. It was worked out beforehand. I'm sure it was.
What do you think about
the insides of the deals? That's what you're giving us, the insides of how it all works. I like that, the breakdown.
Yeah, that's what you didn't have me on for my good looks or my table manner, did you?
No,
we had it on for your expertise.
Which brings me to my next question. Bob Arum recently said that he didn't make any money off Terrence Crawford. I find that hard to believe.
I know he didn't.
He did not.
He did not.
Wow.
No, not on the shows in the end. In other words, I'm not saying along the way when he was a lightweight champ and a junior welterweight champ, but when he was starting to pay him $4.5, $5, $6 million a fight, no, he didn't make any money.
So, Who's going to win that lawsuit?
It's not even a contest. Arum will blow him away.
Wow.
Please, it's as stupid as it comes. I will say that if Terrence Crawford is owed a fight, if he is, then here's the problem with that lawsuit, okay? The lawyers said that he's owed a fight from 2019. He had two fights in 2019. It was 2020 he had one fight. And they were shut down for COVID for a while, and he didn't want to fight with no crowd. He wanted to fight with a crowd. So he held out, only had one fight that year. Now let's just say he is owed a fight from that year. On November 20th, when he beat Porter, he announced, I'm now a free agent. I'm done with Top Rank, done with Bob Arum. I'm moving on, right? Well, if he was owed a fight, how's he done with Top Rank? If you owe him a fight, they owe you a fight. You owe them a fight, too.
Yeah.
So you can't have your cake and eat it, too. You understand what I mean? Okay?
Totally.
He announced himself as a free agent. When you do that, you know, how you go backwards? The judge will say, whoa, you said you were free. Now you say you owed a fight. Well, then you got to go back to Top Rank. So, you know, that's how it works. So we'll see what happens. But there's no racism by Bob Arum, all this crazy stuff. You know, he didn't hold his career back. This is crazy. So there you go.
That's one of the things that we said. I mean, we said this is the money business. At the end of the day, Bob Arum's going to make he's going to do everything possible to make money. So why would he hold anyone? It's not in his best interest to hold anyone back.
It's not. It makes no sense at all. Zero.
Right. That's what we were saying last week.
By the way, look at all the black fighters Bob just signed up in the last year. Every Olympian, every male Olympian, I should say. One was a Mexican American. The rest of them are African American. The list goes on and on. A whole bunch of fighters. So it's totally crazy. You know, really crazy. I mean, look at Terry. Look at George Foreman said. Tim Bradley came out. They're all coming out, and in Bob's defense, there's no racism there. It's utterly ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we were saying.
By the way, just to let you know how boxing I am, I got a Johan Boxing Gym T-shirt from Philadelphia on. See that?
I love it. I love it. What do you think this is going to do to Crawford's career? After
Well, he was in line
loses
to
his-
fight Josh Taylor, who's promoted by Aram.
right.
So that was, that he shot himself in the foot there. I don't see anybody else making him any offers for that ridiculous money Bob was paying him, and I don't see anybody else jumping and say, I want to fight Terrence Crawford. So sort of like between a rock and a hard place right now. Let's see what Thurman does if Thurman wins tomorrow night.
Right.
Okay. I mean, listen, if Barros wins, they can make Barros and Terrence Crawford. The problem is there's no public demand for it. There is public demand for Thurman, and what I think Thurman will price himself out. Okay, yeah. So that's my opinion.
Are you watching the fights tomorrow night?
Am I watching the fights tomorrow night? I'm not watching the pay-per-view. No. No, I'll be watching Bam Rodriguez. Hopefully,
yes,
Carlos Quadras.
He's gonna.
Yeah, I'm a believer in him. I'm a big believer in him. Here's my view on pay-per-view. Okay, boxing. It's an old model with that the streaming networks the streaming apps came in with DAZN, with ESPN Plus. They shouldn't be putting fights on, except for the biggest fights. Wilder Fury belonged on pay-per-view. Porter Crawford was barely pay-per-view. The only reason why it was because Porter was the number one contender, was a two-time champ, and basically is a top welterweight contender. Okay, I get that. So that was pay-per-view barely. Okay, these other fights that Al Heyman's putting on PBC, this stuff's not pay-per-view. Now these guys tomorrow night, let me give you a little of the background. One guy who lost his last fight has been inactive for 2.5 years. Okay, the other guy, he got knocked out in his last fight, and now they're fighting on pay-per-view. It sounds like a consolation bout. This is not even a bout that should be on Free Fox, on a main event on Free Fox. This is like a co-feature, and they're getting, and it's not pay-per-view material. We're embarrassing ourselves. I mean, Martin, Luis Ortiz and Charles Martin wasn't pay-per-view. None of these fights are pay-per-view. Tank Davis and the Pitbull there, Cruz. Isaac Cruz. That's not pay-per-view.
I didn't think
pay-per-view is for the biggest fights. Okay, a pay-per-view fight could be Chocolatito and Estrada again, something like that. That's that. But Eddie Hearn's putting that on the zone, but that's a pay-per-view quality fight. Okay, it doesn't go by the weight class; it goes by the best of the best, the popularity of the fighters, the fights that are in public demand that people want to see. And nobody in this world says, I can't wait to see Thurman Barros, or are they going to fight? Before it was even announced, are they going to fight? No, nobody asked for that fight. That came out of nowhere. And it's the old Yiddish expression. It's dreck.
Rick, what is your thoughts on Eddie Hearn's performance in the USA with Matchroom USA?
Basically a flop. He's been a great UK promoter, and he has not made a mark in the United States. And I'm not saying he flopped, but he's flopped compared to what he's done in the UK. I'm not saying he's been unsuccessful, but he hasn't been nearly as successful as he should. He didn't hire the right people when he started. Too many decisions are being made from the other side of the pond, and it doesn't work over there. A guy sitting in England, in London, doesn't know what's happening in Arizona, doesn't know what's happening in California, doesn't understand the demographics, the lay of the land, what events are happening in that area that day, what's on national TV over here that's going to affect everything. They just don't know. They just don't know. They just don't have a clue. So this is what you got. You got a guy that you can't serve two masters, and Eddie's serving two masters which is basically the UK and America, and it's very, very hard to do. Every time Aaron does something that's overseas, he brings a partner in. Frank Warren in England, MTK in England, Mr. Honda in Japan. He has a partner on the ground over there. Eddie's trying to conquer the world single-handedly. It doesn't work too well.
Okay.
Are you familiar with what Probellum is doing?
Of course I am. I just signed up Spencer Wilcox with Probellum. So I'm sure.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So yes, I'm very familiar with what they're doing. They have a very good business model, both promotionally and as a worldwide media company. And they have a lot of brains behind it. It's not only Richard Schaefer. There's Harrison Whitman. There's Eric Winter, the COO. There's a lot of Anthony Cantanzaro. There's a lot of intelligent people involved with Probellum. And Richard had Ringstar. He was by himself, Richard Schaefer. This is a company surrounded by intelligent people, so I think they have a real chance to make it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I do the news show and I'm reading off a lot of the deals that they're doing on a week-by-week basis is really mind-blowing. They're going around.
I'm sorry, excuse me. Also, the Chechen Wolf from Toronto, the guy I'm involved with, the advisor, he signed up with them too. So there you go. Two guys from Ontario that are signed up with them.
Probellum, man, they're making the right moves. It seems like it looks like they're
definitely. They got two shows. They got two shows in March, back to back on the same weekend, and the 18th and 19th of March in Dubai. They got shows all over the place and all the time, and they're doing well. They're moving. I mean, they're doing well.
Yes, they are. They are, and I think they're going to become. I think didn't Richard work with Oscar De La Hoya at one point?
Yeah, he ran the company as president. Okay,
so he said enough of the shenanigans. I'm going to start things and do things right. So a lot of strategic moves are put into play, and I think they're going to be a huge force in this upcoming 2 years.
Yep, and it's not run by Richard. Richard is the president, but like I said, there's a lot of smart people that are around him. He's not a lone ranger here, where he's a lone ranger with Ringstar.
Right.
So Carl's asked. Go ahead.
Well, I'm just going to say, Carl from Last Bell Boxing says hello to you, Rick. He says you're a legend. Also says the savior of all things promotions in the U.S. and he wanted me to quote him, so I did just to do it for you.
What did he say? I'm sorry.
He said the savior of all things promotions in the U.S. Quote me.
Carl's a good man.
Yes, he is. He says De La Hoya versus Mayweather. Your thoughts?
You mean back in the day, or you mean them fighting again?
Back in the day, Carl, or them fighting again? We got to know.
I hope they don't fight again. Neither of them should grace a boxing ring again. And they'll let their legacy be the fight that they already had.
Right. I think at one point you should just not jump back in the ring. There's
right.
Yeah, and those two guys that shouldn't.
My thoughts on Mayweather are we once had a show that was hosted by the Canadian heavyweight champ Bola Ray, and he did an entire show devoted to Floyd Mayweather and how he should not have left an undefeated record in place, because he lost 3 fights according to Bola over the span of his career. So it was a blemished record in his opinion. So anyway, Floyd Mayweather just comes to mind. So I don't know. It's a huge debate in the boxing community whether he should.
Well, there's rumors it's about to happen. So I don't know.
What, he's re-entering the ring?
Yeah, that De La Hoya and Mayweather might happen again.
Really?
Yeah,
let's hope not. It's another circus. I don't like those exhibition things and old timers, and it's just a joke, It's
what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on Jake Paul and the way he's promoting things then?
Listen, he's done well for himself. He's bringing new eyeballs to boxing. Whether they stay or not's a different issue. I don't know that. It's too early to say. But so far so good. He does some fun stuff, and I don't buy that celebrity type boxing stuff. But it's he's got gumption, and you got to respect what he's done so far, and he's done well so far. So let's see how it pans out going forward, and see where it goes from here.
Do you think that his promotional company has a chance in boxing?
Depends who's involved with it. Depends
Right.
who's helping run it. If we were relying on just Jake Paul, I don't know that. But let's see if there's boxing guys, business executives. Let's see who's involved. I don't know that. Do I think they have a chance? Well, sure they have a chance. They have money. They have. He's got notoriety. He's done well for himself so far. So he's a natural promoter. So maybe it does well. I can't. I don't think it's going to make a big imprint in boxing, but he might be a third level promoter or something like that. But he's not going to be able to compete with the top ranks. And just it's pretty tough.
Out of curiosity, we were talking about this the other day with Bob Arum hitting 90 odd years plus. And you were mentioning executives at the pro bellum level. What are his executives like?
They're the tops in the business. He's got his stepson Todd DeBuff as the president. Bob's a chairman. They have a COO, Brad Jacobs. He used to run USA Network over here, the boxing. He's excellent. They've got the two best matchmakers in the business: Hall of Famer Bruce Strampler and eventual Hall of Famer Brad Goodman. They've got Carl Moretti, who ran main events for years. They've got a full staff of 7 executives. They have an in-house lawyer. They have an in-house chief financial officer. They've got it all in place. They got a top PR staff. They're in business. Upon Bob's final demise, they won't miss a step.
Good for them, because I know when Mike reads off a lot of the up and coming signings to Top Rank. I mean, we're not surprised, but we are curious. How that company will move on. But
it's a question that's the 3 questions I get asked every week. What happens when Bob Arum dies? Okay, the Top Rank is one. Okay, and of course, Mike Tyson versus Rocky Marciano, who'd win? That stupid one. That stupid one. And the other basic question is that how do you make a living in boxing? How do you do that? So, you're not a manager, you're not a promoter, but how do you do that? Well, I broker deals every day, and I render advice. What can I tell you? So,
that's
awesome. You should see. I'll tell you guys a funny story. Okay, so I met my wife, and she tries to explain to her brother and her father what I do for a living. And they were standing there scratching their heads like, what do you call it? So the brother gets on the computer, and he says, well, he ain't lying. So he Googled me, and all kinds of, 30 pages came up. So, Don King henchman, this, blah, blah, blah. Well, he ain't lying. If this is the same Rick Glaser, but it said, some of them said Williamsville, New York, Buffalo. So, yeah, it was me. So it's tough to explain to people what I do for a living. I'll tell you guys one really funny story that I tell people, and they hit the deck. So I got bumped up to first class. I was in New York City, and I was flying to Palm Beach. And I was going to spend some time down there, like a month, 6 weeks, a little vacation, do business with Don King, normal shit. And I'm sitting next to this woman. She's wearing a Rolex with diamonds. She's wearing, got the Gucci purse. She reeked the money.
Yeah.
She says, so what do you do for a living? She says to me. I said, after we talked for a few minutes, I says, I'm in the boxing business. She says, corrugated? So wait. I says, no, professional boxing business. You know, she says that. Oh, you have a doctorate in it. So she was that oblivious. So I just said, okay, yes, I do. That's correct. So,
oh my God.
I had another person say to me one time, so what do you, a guy, and he says, what do you do for a living? I says, I'm in the professional boxing business. The only thing I know about is Lennox Lewis is world heavyweight champ. I said, he's been retired for 6 years. So, so there you go. So it's it's a weird thing when you tell somebody you're in boxing, whether it's a woman you're trying to date. I had a woman that I didn't know exactly what she did for a living, but I knew she was a nurse, but I didn't know what kind. So I didn't tell her what I did. I just told her that, I'm a businessman. I negotiate business deals. A guy comes up to me in a restaurant. He asked me for my autograph for his son. That his son's a big fan of mine. So I saw you on TV the other night when you would sit next to Don King. Well, she knew Don King was. The woman stormed out of the place. She was all mad. She gets up. She goes, "You lied to me. You know what she did for a living? She worked with head trauma victims."
Oh.
So she wasn't exactly a big boxing fan. So there you go. I had a prior girlfriend. Here's another one. I had a prior girlfriend that she hated boxing. And that's why we broke up. She couldn't stand it. She couldn't stand telling people I did for a living. She was into the arts, the plays, all that kind of stuff, theater stuff. And I'm into sports, in general, but boxing in particular. And she couldn't stand it. And she just said, we're not we shouldn't be together. We're opposite people in that respect. I don't respect that you put people in a ring to hit each other in the head. And, it just didn't work. So listen. And then you've had other women that like, oh my God, they think that they think it's really cool what I do for a living. My wife thought it was cool. So my wife watched boxing with her father and her brother. She grew up watching it. So she thought it was cool. And I got a little lucky there. If she hated boxing, I'd still be single. Just imagine. Lucky she liked boxing.
True that.
Oh, man, yes.
Do you feel, though, that boxers should continue? There's no concussion protocol in boxing, but should fighters be allowed to continue?
Well, excuse me for interrupting. There is actually concussion protocol, because if you get a concussion in boxing, the commission suspends you indefinitely for a minimum of 90 days. Then you have to get head tests, MRI, neurology tests, all kinds of CAT scan, all that kind of stuff. So there actually is concussion protocol. Yep.
If there's no health, if the boxer doesn't have health insurance, how is that covered in the U.S.?
Because of it's covered because the promoter of the next fight that wants to put him in his next fight sometimes will pay for it, or sometimes the insurance from the bout that he was already in will pay for it.
Mm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's something we wondered often.
Well, I answered another question. Keep going. Come on now.
Well, I'm reading this comment about one of our favorite subjects here, Lennox Lewis. Now, let me give you a bit of a backgrounder. He was born in Britain, but when his dad left the family, him and his mom moved to Canada. He was raised in Canada. He was trained in Canada by Canadians. He went to the Olympics twice. At the second Olympics, he won the gold for Canada. And then as a young adult, he moved over back to England as a dual citizenship, and continued a great pro career over in England. But Carl is saying to clarify some comments that you'd made, something about Jamaican and Canadian and whatever.
Yeah,
I have no idea.
His father was Jamaican. His father was Jamaican. Correct. Mm-hmm.
So there's no way you can have triple citizenship. So
no. I didn't say triple citizenship. I said he's claimed by the people of 3 countries:
Yes.
Canada, the UK, which is not a country. England's the country, but the kingdom, and Jamaica. So I mean, yes, no question. I mean, he was a great heavyweight, and he's well respected, great champion. Remember, very unusual. He left the game with the title intact.
Yeah,
he was world champ when he retired. That's
he was
very rare.
undisputed and walked out and retired. And
Yep.
he's the last undisputed heavyweight champion in boxing.
There you go.
Right? And then we had the 4-belt era. There's never been an undisputed champion since we've had 4 belts in the heavyweight division.
Yep, correct though.
Yeah, man. Oh. Some big fights this weekend, though. I'm loving it.
Yeah, I really like the Bam Rodriguez Quadras fight. That's a great fight. That's what I'm looking forward to be honest with you.
Yeah, that's going to be a great fight. And then we have Eubank and Liam Williams.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good fight too. That definitely is a good fight too. Yeah.
What's your thoughts on the outcome?
I favor Liam. I do. I think he's a tough. I think he's a tough, gritty guy, and I think he'll get it done.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think it's going to be great. A lot of good fights to watch this weekend. To all the fans out there that are watching us, you know what it is, man. There's tons of fights, tons of cards. It's finally boxing is getting back underway with I guess the UK opening up with their fights, taking the month of January off, and it's now over since it's now February. I'm looking forward to this. Carl says Eubank beats Williams. Ray from Ray also says Eubank beats Williams. Should be a good one. I can't wait for this fight. This card gets underway at I believe it's 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for all those people in North America.
I just to let you know, I like Williams because he's a gritty guy, and when you fight a gritty guy fights a stylist who's not a great puncher, normally the gritty guy gets in on him. So I think that's going to be, a fight that will be in the trench. I know Eubank is not going to want to do the fighting. It's going to be Liam Williams, but I think Liam Williams can handle it. So
it's definitely a fight. It's a fight about levels. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. No question.
Definitely a fight about levels.
No good. Graham, what else you got? Come on now, fire away now.
No, I love talking to guys about history, the history of the sport and the changes that have taken place in the sport over the decades. I myself, as a youngster, was watching the Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier go back and forth, the tilts that they had. Obviously, long before. Quite frankly, it was on a black and white television. That's how long ago it was. But and then you go through these various eras, and I'm a fan of the heavyweights. And something that we were discussing the other day was the actual size of Tyson Fury, and how many of these heavyweights are truly super heavyweights, like 6'9", and closing in on 300 pounds. Like, those are big boys, and I don't want to see another division. I think we have enough divisions. I think it's enough. But I am seeing the, how do you say it? The grooming of these much bigger heavyweights. Jared Anderson would be a great example. I think he's got a great future ahead of him. I really like him. I forget that fellow you interviewed, Mike. But he. Who?
You're talking about Matty. Yes.
Matty Harris,
yes. Another big kid, man. 6'9", coming out of the UK. He's a big boy. 6'9", 270. He's going to be. He's got a lot to do in this sport for sure at that size.
So I think Eddie. So I was saying this rather jokingly the other day. I said, so Eddie Hearn's got himself a bit of a dilemma. Because he's got both Dillian White and Anthony Joshua in his stable, and if they both lose, I was making the joke. I wonder if he's got his feelers out for unsigned heavyweights right now, because if those two guys both lose, I don't know who else he's got in his stable.
He's still got a piece of Usyk, so he's still involved there. So.
Oh, does he? I didn't know that.
Yep.
Good to know.
Well, I just noticed that Carl and Ray are agreeing on something for the first time ever, and it's actually happening in the comments right now live.
What is it?
What's he say?
They were both agreeing that Eubank takes the fight, and they always batted heads in their opinions. And I just think it's funny that I've just watched these guys both agree, first time ever.
As we wind down here, we have 2 minutes. We have 2 minutes left. One of our biggest audience size that come in that tune into our show is actually from Nigeria. And I was speaking to a fellow, not in Nigeria, but in Ghana, a neighboring country. And he said boxing in West Africa is absolutely taking off. And if you take a look at the population base, I think it's like 300 million in Nigeria and maybe 100 million westward towards Senegal. But you've got a huge boxing demographic, if you will, that's not really been tapped into by the mainstream boxing promoters. What do you think there? Do you think we've got an opportunity?
There's no money there. The people are poor. It's not going to happen. The promoters go where the money is. They asked Willie Sutton, why he robbed banks. He said that was where the money is.
Right. So true.
Okay, so they're not going to go. There's no reason to go there. They're going to go to Las Vegas. They're going to go to what was the Staples Center, which is crypto, whatever now. They're going to go to Madison Square Garden. They're going to go to the Alamo Dome in San Antonio. That's where they're going. They're not going to Nigeria. That won't happen. So that's an issue. But listen, we got 1 more minute. Okay, I want to say thank you very much for having me on. I'm as close to you as just like you got contacted me. I'm available when you guys are. If I'm not at the fights on Friday night, which I don't go to fights that much, I'm available. And if anybody wants to get a hold of me, follow me on Twitter. There's several fake Rick Glaser accounts, but this is at Real Rick Glaser 1, the numeral 1. I have 4,100 followers, and I just went on Instagram. It's rickglaser.1. So that's how to get a hold of me, and follow my stuff and what I'm all about. And my website is glazerboxing.com, appropriately called glazerboxing.com. So real quick, I'll tell you guys a real quick funny story. You guys are really like. I told my wife back a few years ago, that when the Cash App started, he said, they're sending me money for advice. Well, what do you give advice on? I said, sex. Sex. So she thought I was serious. There you go.
Rick,
that's
honestly,
that's where the money is.
You, man. It was a pleasure meeting you. Thanks for coming on, man. Honestly,
it was a pleasure. It was a pleasure to be here with you, fine gentlemen. I look forward to doing it again at your leisure. Okay.
Thanks very much,
Rick. Rick, I would like to get in touch with your amateurs and maybe get them on my show 4 o'clock for an interview and talk to them. So I'll get in touch.
The kid from Canada, you mean? Yes. Okay. He's turning pro March 25th. So leading up to that event, get a hold of me. Okay.
Yeah, definitely I will.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks for joining us, Rick. Appreciate it.
Enjoy the fights tomorrow night. Good night.
We always do.
Well, that was
awesome.
great. Having a legend like him here joining us, that was awesome. It's great. I can't wait to have him back. Carl, Ray, thank you for tuning in, man. Always, it's always a pleasure. Thanks, buddy. We love all the camaraderie and the back and forth. I can't believe you guys actually agreed on something. I'm surprised there. And Graham, any last words before we get out of here?
No, the one thing I was going to ask Rick was whether he had ever worked with Tim Witherspoon before. And lo and behold, I go and forget to ask the one question I was going to ask. So we'll have to have Rick back on when Tim's busy tonight. But we'll
have to get them both on talking about stories of Don King.
Well, yeah, exactly. They both worked with Don King, and Rick seems to think that Don's a good guy, and Tim's had his issues with Don King, but we'll see.
Right.
So anyway, for all you boxing fans out there, I apologize for forgetting that one key question, but that gives me a good excuse to bring Rick back when we have Tim back in the studio as well.
Definitely.
So go ahead, take us out there, Mike.
So all the fans watching around the world, thanks for tuning in to this wonderful episode again of the panel on Friday night, starring Graham and myself and our guest tonight, Rick Glaser, who decided to stop by and join us. Thanks to all the fans that are watching. Shout out to Carl, Ray, for all the comments and wonderful questions that we asked our guests. Guys, we'll see you next week. Same time, same channel, new topics.
Absolutely.